14 years ago, when I was 17, I had an encounter that remains the most chilling experience of my life. Growing up, I always felt that our house was haunted. I'd catch glimpses of shadows, hear odd noises, and witness unexplainable events. Though I was fascinated by the paranormal, I tried to dismiss some of these occurrences as figments of my imagination. My parents separated when I was 17, and I chose to stay with my dad in our family home. During this time, my father, struggling with his own demons, turned to alcohol, often leaving me effectively alone. To understand what happened, it's important to know the layout of our house. The living room was spacious, with a couch against one wall. This wall had a window-like opening to the kitchen, allowing a clear view between the two rooms. To physically get to the kitchen, though, you had to walk through an office and a hallway that circled around the house. The kitchen had stairs leading to the basement and a back door opening to a yard, which was our main access and parking area. The incident occurred on a night when I was alone. As a night owl, I was up at around 2 a.m., watching TV, when I heard the back door open and close. Assuming it was my uncle, who lived nearby and often used that entrance, or my father returning from a drinking spree, I called out. Receiving no response, I grew frustrated, knowing that if my dad didn't answer, he was probably very drunk, which I hated dealing with. I got up and peered through the kitchen window from the living room, ready to confront him, but I froze at the sight before me. In the kitchen stood a towering 7 to 8 foot tall shadowy figure with distinct head, shoulders, and limbs, but no discernible facial features. It was the deepest, darkest black I'd ever seen. Whispering a tentative greeting, I received no reply, only the figure slowly turning its head towards me. In a panic, I grabbed an envelope knife from a nearby desk, the only weapon at hand. I snatched my boots and waited, half out of fear and half out of a bizarre curiosity. After what felt like an eternity, but was only minutes, I heard a noise. My cat walked past me, stiffly approached the kitchen, and then suddenly bolted upstairs, her fur bristling. That was my breaking point. I dashed out of the house, barefoot in the snow, only stopping to put on my boots when I felt a safe distance away. I rushed to a nearby store to call my dad. Sober at his girlfriend's place, he agreed to pick me up and check the house. He found nothing amiss. Hesitantly, I returned with him, insisting we had come through the back door. To my horror, he pointed out it was locked. I tested it myself, confirming it wouldn't budge. To this day, I can't explain what I saw or why it appeared to me. It left me petrified, unable to sleep in that house for weeks. Even now, recalling the incident sends shivers down my spine and brings tears to my eyes. Something uninvited and unsettling had entered our home that night, a memory etched forever in my mind. I remember working late one night at an art gallery in Tokyo, a city where even the skeptics whisper about ghosts. It's strange, but in Japan, these beliefs intertwine seamlessly with modern life. That evening, my boss, a rather unpleasant character known for his rude demeanor and unfair treatment towards women, insisted I complete a task before leaving. He was a stout, balding man who carried himself with an undeserved air of importance. The gallery was silent, save for a peculiar tapping sound emerging from behind one of the paintings. Initially, I dismissed it as some sort of plumbing issue within the walls, but as the sound grew louder, a sense of unease began to creep over me. To calm my nerves, I played some music in the office, hoping it would drown out the unsettling noise. About 30 minutes later, a strange, almost otherworldly voice caught my attention. It seemed to emanate from the same painting that was the source of the tapping. The entire gallery was engulfed in darkness, with only the office lights on. The thought of venturing out into that darkness, towards the painting, filled me with dread. The painting in question depicted a Victorian-era woman, elegantly dressed and holding a fan close to her chest. My task required me to activate the security system before leaving, which was unfortunately located near this eerie portrait. Gathering my courage, I stepped towards the painting, only to notice something startling. The woman's eyes in the painting were moving, the only part of her that seemed animated. She was looking away, but her eyes were rolling, trying to catch a glimpse of me. Fear took over, and I rushed out of the gallery, abandoning the task and the security system. The next morning I returned, only to find the painting now eerily empty. The Victorian lady was gone, as if she had escaped from her canvas prison. This experience haunted me for days, and eventually I decided to leave the job. Even though the painting remained vacant, I couldn't shake the feeling that the Victorian lady was still watching me, lurking in some unseen corner of the world. It was a chilling reminder of the inexplicable mysteries that sometimes occur, leaving us with more questions than answers. When I was about 8 years old, I encountered something inexplicable that has since cast a long, unsettling shadow over my life. I remember lying in bed, feverish, when a tiny, ghost-like figure appeared, walking across my sheets. It was the size of a small action figure, completely white, and despite my protests, it seemed unaffected by my presence. From that day on, odd occurrences became a part of my everyday life. My TV remote would act on its own, changing channels without my input. My phone seemed to be controlled by an unseen hand, malfunctioning in ways that defied explanation. These minor but persistent annoyances grew increasingly difficult to ignore. The sensation of something moving around my bed, akin to a pet's movements, became a nightly occurrence even when my dog, Samantha, wasn't there. Samantha, a small dog who had belonged to my mother before she passed, would sometimes growl at empty spaces, heightening the eerie atmosphere. The feeling of invisible hands touching my feet in the dark was particularly disturbing. I couldn't shake the notion that I had been cursed or had attracted some malevolent entity. This presence seemed to revel in irritating me with these small yet deeply unsettling acts. My phone would inexplicably call people from my contacts, often those I hadn't contacted in a while, and it would switch back on after I had turned it off. These occurrences escalated to the point where, after ending a phone call and putting my phone away, I would hear a voice saying hello from my pocket, indicating an unprompted call had been made to someone else. Even after playing games like Candy Crush, my phone would make calls on its own. The feeling of being followed or watched was constant. I became increasingly unnerved, feeling as if an invisible presence was attached to me, causing these disruptions. One night, as I was pondering over these events, my bedroom door, which was slightly ajar, closed on its own with a loud click, as if acknowledging my awareness of its presence. I should mention that I have always felt different. Since childhood, I have seen shadowy figures and often predicted events before they happened. I believe I'm an empath, perhaps destined to be a medicine man, but I have struggled with these abilities, having no one to guide or teach me. Growing up, these experiences frightened me, and now I feel it might be too late to understand or harness them. But if anyone out there has experienced anything similar and found a way to cope or understand it, I would be immensely grateful for your advice. The burden of these unexplained phenomena grows heavier each day, and any insight into how to address or comprehend them would be a beacon of hope in this unsettling chapter of my life. Ever since my earliest memories, the paranormal has been a constant in my life. My family, including parents, aunts, uncles, and grandparents, all have their tales of encounters with the unknown. The house where I grew up seemed to be a magnet for such occurrences. Spirits, ghosts, and other inexplicable entities seemed to drift through our home as if it were a crossroads for the supernatural. I often saw shadow figures looping between our kitchen and hallway. Cold spots and unexplainable noises in the nearby woods were commonplace. When I was around 13, these experiences began to take a more pronounced effect on me. Initially, I was skeptical, even when my twin and cousin shared their experiences. I thought they were just trying to spook us. However, as I grew older, the reality of these events began to crystallize, especially after overhearing hushed adult conversations that we were shooed away from. There's one particular entity that has been a part of our lives for the past 9 years. We refer to it as "Don't Call Its Name," a lesson learned the hard way about the power held in names. Initially, it seemed to be just a shadowy figure, but its antics escalated to loud stomps down the hallway and knocking on doors and walls. Its presence was suffocating, like being in a dark, oppressive space where the air felt thick. One morning in my junior year of high school, I was jolted awake by 3 loud knocks on my bedroom door. Thinking it was my mom, I found it odd when she denied it, despite having heard the knocks herself. Later that day, I heard inexplicable meowing from under a recliner, but no pets were inside. My twin didn't believe me, brushing it off as imagination. For a while, things settled down, but in my senior year, the entity's presence intensified. In my bedroom mirror, I'd see hands clawing out from under my bed. At night, it felt like an overprotective parent looming over me, its breath heavy and growls deep. It became so unbearable that I spent a month sleeping on my twin's bedroom floor. One day, the entity revealed a more defined form. It dropped to hands and knees, its face a void, momentarily engulfing my vision. This encounter was deeply unsettling. 2 weeks ago, I moved my bed to a different spot in my room, which seemed to aggravate the entity. The first calm night was followed by a morning where my air conditioner's setting inexplicably lowered. That night, my coat hangers flew off the rack, an event so startling that I needed my twin to turn on the light. Despite these ongoing and often frightening experiences, I've reached a point where I'm not as easily shaken by them. Yet there's a part of me that wonders if this is all real, or if, as my cousin once suggested, it's just a figment of my imagination. Either way, these occurrences have become a regular part of my existence, and I've learned to live with this strange companion of shadows and mystery. As a cadet at a military training base, I found myself in an unusual and eerie situation that I'll never forget. Our accommodations were simple: a long trailer with rows of bunk beds, 25 on each side, housing 50 of us, all under the watchful eyes of 2 sergeants. The base had an unsettling reputation, partly due to a tale about a former cadet deeply involved in voodoo practices. According to the story, this cadet would sit on his chest, murmuring to himself, as others showered and prepared for bed. One evening, the sergeants, planning their usual pranks, were interrupted by a group of terrified cadets. Rushing inside, they found the voodoo-practicing cadet inside a locker, speaking an unknown language, his eyes alarmingly red. The military police, MP, were called as we were hurried out of the trailer. While waiting, screams and strange noises emanated from inside. When the MPs arrived, they witnessed the cadet contorted unnaturally, his gaze intense and unsettling. After some struggle, he was secured and taken away, insisting on lying flat to avoid them. This bizarre incident was attributed to his voodoo practices, supposedly inviting spirits into our world. One night after several cadets had left, I moved to a top bunk. Waking in the middle of the night, I saw white figures standing beside each bed and a shadowy figure in a long coat near the sergeant's office. Terrified, I tried to wake my bunkmate, but he was deep in sleep. The figure in the coat drew nearer, and the room felt cold and charged with a strange energy. Suddenly, I felt a chilling grip on my hand, paralyzing me with fear. I couldn't scream. Turning towards the white figure by my bed, I saw it was a young boy with others behind him. In a calming voice, he assured me they were here to protect us from the malevolent presence. His words were comforting yet surreal. I fell back into a restless sleep and awoke the next morning unsure if what I experienced was a dream or reality. But the vividness of those moments, the cold touch, the reassuring words of the spectral boy have stayed with me, etched in my memory. I spent 5 memorable years in Long Beach, California, where my journey began in a quaint bungalow located near Wilson High School. The area, known for its unique living arrangements, offered us a charming 2-bedroom house tucked behind a larger main house. My partner, Alex, and I chose this place as our first shared home. One of the bedrooms became Alex's office, and from the start, it felt unusually active. Our cat seemed fascinated by this room, often staring intently at the walls as if perceiving something invisible to us. My experiences in that house still linger in my mind, especially one unsettling incident. On a sleepless night, I retreated to the living room to watch TV. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a figure move from our bedroom towards the office. But when I checked, there was no one there. Alex was sound asleep. Our friends, who lived across the street, shared tales of strange occurrences in their home too, leading me to believe that there was something unusual about our street. Before moving to Long Beach, I had lived in Connecticut, where my fascination with the occult began to deepen. My ex-partner Jamie and I shared a love for music, nocturnal adventures, and the occasional mischievous trip to cemeteries at night. One such night, we decided to make our own Ouija board, using a glass as a planchette. However, the experience didn't yield anything noteworthy, but what happened after returning home that night around 4 a.m. left an indelible mark on me. Our neighborhood was eerily quiet and dark. As we entered through the back door, which had a window, we closed it and started ascending the stairs. Suddenly, we froze in terror. A sound like a hand slamming and then dragging down the glass of the door echoed through the silence. This happened 3 more times, leaving us paralyzed with fear. After a tense period of silence, I mustered the courage to shout, "Go away, you're not welcome here." The rest of the night was eerily quiet. I can't explain what occurred that night, but it was then that my belief in the existence of spirits became a conviction.